Welcome to Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm Richard Fields. On the program today, we have Debra Desrosiers, Vice Chair of Don't Double the Tax, No and Measure B. Erik, Smitt, spokesman for Don't Double the Tax, No and Measure B. And Robert Page, retired financial planner. Welcome to the show. We're on the air on Access Sacramento, Channel 17 and Sacramento Cable. We're also on YouTube and on the web at www.accesssacramento.org. So you can see us at 8 p.m. on Thursday, noon on Friday, or my favorite time, 4 a.m. on Saturday morning. On the whole Measure B, which is a follow-up to Measure A, there's supposed to be a taxpayer oversight board to measure how the funds for transportation, this is road transportation, bus transportation, and light rail transportation, for how the half cent and the proposed second half cent sales tax for the entire county of Sacramento. It's supposed to be a taxpayer oversight board to make sure that everybody is on the up and up. How's that working out?
Not so well.
Why?
Well, there seem to be vacancies.
Really?
The people who are
How
on
many
it,
people are supposed to be on the
there are
board?
three.
Oh, three?
Three, correct?
3 professionals.
Yes. And, Debra here is the executive director for the Sacramento Taxpayers Association. She and none of her members are on this. I'm wondering what kind of taxpayer oversight they have. They have apparently met, but they've produced no reports, taken no actions. So what is the oversight? Is it, a gathering of like minds to rubber stamp?
Okay, so do we know who is on the oversight committee at all? Do we know what the names are?
I personally don't know the name.
Actually, I don't have the names handy.
No.
But there are
But
three names.
there's 3, but 1 vacancy right now, so there's only 2.
Okay.
And they're different professions. Someone with a developer background, someone with a financial background, and the third is in our report.
But is not on the board at this point anyway.
One of them's not on the board.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and so we don't know whether they've met. We don't know whether they've.
Well, they do meet sometimes. They missed their March meeting. They did meet in June. Sacramento Transportation Authority has started putting the agendas up on their website, so now we can see what the agendas are. But the problem is with the website, there's no reports issued, and they're supposed to do what's called a performance audit. And according to Sacramento Transportation Authority, performance audits have not been done yet.
Coming, I'm sure.
Well, that's what they say.
Okay.
But it is part of the ordinance. It is a law that they do these performance audits, and they're not doing them.
Okay, now they're supposed to meet what, quarterly?
Quarterly.
Okay, for what, an hour meeting or something like that?
I don't know.
Nobody knows?
They hadn't been posting the agendas until recently when we started asking about it.
Are these meetings open to the public?
Yes.
Okay, is the public notified in any way, shape, or form before they take place?
You would have to be watching the website for Sacramento Transportation Authority and looking for the agenda to post.
So you'd have to look at the fine print at the bottom of the website in order to find when the meeting's going to be?
Yeah, it's under meetings. It's at the very bottom, and they're kind of hard to know when they're coming up because they only have to post it 72 hours in advance.
72 hours in advance, so you got to kind of watch it every 3 days.
Yeah, so I don't know anybody that does that.
And they don't happen on a scheduled time. It's just whenever the 2 or 3 decide it's near our quarterly meeting time, we're going to have a meeting in a day and a half.
Are you free for lunch?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a set schedule, but it is quarterly that they're supposed to meet.
Okay, are you making it your business to watch that website and go to their next meeting?
Yeah, I think I might do that.
Okay, are you allowed to videotape?
Of course, it's a Brown Act.
Public meeting. It is
a public meeting.
It is open to the public. Well,
Sure.
that's a good thing. Okay, just wanted to clear that up, make sure that the taxpayer overseers are doing their job. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We don't really know.
Well, they're not issuing the performance audit reports.
So we know they're not doing that part of their job at the very least.
So they're not meeting the mandates of Measure A law, and that is clear. But the real issue is, what are we being told and what's really happening? Do we have confidence in the system? So this provision was added into Measure A,
Which passed in 2009 or became effective?
2004.
Became
and
effective in
became
2009.
effective in 2009. And they've collected $650-some million to date. And we ask these questions, and, well, then they become more communicative about what's going on. But really, what I believe the public is sold is that there will be taxpayer advocates on this board.
You know, in this brochure, they actually have a little blurb about the independent taxpayer oversight. It's not in this one, but it's in another one that you have, where they talk about the taxpayer oversight.
We have many of them. They've printed quite a few.
Lots of advertisements.
That one.
I mean, education.
Lots of education.
Yeah.
Where did the $600 million come from?
The half cent
Measure A.
tax.
Measure A.
This is what it says in their brochure. Sales tax funds help secure matching and state federal money and are closely audited by an independent oversight committee. That is not happening.
So there's no report, there's certainly no audit.
What they're calling their audit, or what they've given me as their audit, is their CAFR, their Certified Annual Financial Report. And that's issued by an accounting firm. And it's not an audit, per se, by the Independent Oversight Committee. But what this says that they're doing is that they are monitoring the matching state and federal money for the capital projects. And that is not being done.
Okay, so does that mean that matching funds from state and feds are not being taken advantage of? They're not getting
We
them?
don't know, because this oversight committee is not issuing reports telling us whether or not it's being done.
Okay, so we don't know whether any matching funds have been obtained at all?
We don't, because I've asked Sacramento Transportation Authority to provide me with that information, and they told me that I would have to go directly to each jurisdiction: the city of Elk Grove, the city of Rancho Cordova, the city of Citrus Heights, city of Folsom,
And don't
city
forget
of Galt,
Ileton.
City of Ileton. I would have to go directly to each entity and find out if they're actually matching funds.
And have you done that?
I have not done that, but that is not what this says.
Uh-huh.
This says that their oversight committee does that.
And it's not?
They're not.
Okay,
They're clearly not.
okay.
Is there some way to stop that with like a cease and desist order until they've followed all the compliance?
Well, certainly, as we've discussed before, the method, certainly we've gotten some of the STA's attention, but the way to get these things fixed is to go to court and get an injunction. Unfortunately, that's very expensive, and we're poorly funded.
Your funding amounts to what,
$21,000 at the moment.
compared to how much is being spent by the proponents of Measure B?
Well, the ones from Darrell Steinberg through the developers, through the engineering firms, construction firms, have ponied up about $600,000 to date. And then if you look at these brochures, nice color events, many of which come in our mail. Some came to my home. This one went to a friend's home from Sacramento County. You know, these probably cost $1 or $2 a piece to deliver to a house.
The print and deliver, yeah.
Yes, I know the one because a person at the city of Sacramento said that their publication was $58,000 worth of our tax dollars. I think that figure might not include all of the development, artistry, etc. But it shows that rather than, I asked myself, how many potholes could we fix with $58,000? Now, I think we could fix quite a few.
You're an optimistic person.
One or two.
At least 58.
So, yes, we haven't been able to total up because they're still coming in from all of the cities and jurisdictions. I'm presuming many of them are producing promotional material on Measure B like this, and so it looks like it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I read somewhere, I'm not sure if it's in your material or where, but I read somewhere the Sacramento drivers are allegedly spending something like $2,300 per year on extra car maintenance and repair due to the ill repair of county roads. Do you know where that figure comes from?
I believe it was in a local newspaper article recently. I don't have it here with me, but it is a topic that's visited repeatedly about the cost to people who drive an automobile, the cost of potholes and such. And certainly there is an expense in tires shredded and wheel alignments and broken springs.
Okay, is that factored into whether RTA money is spent on light rail and bus as opposed to street maintenance and repair?
To me, the Measure B and Measure A are just totally formulaic. They allocate pieces of the pie. I look at it as the politicians gather around a Thanksgiving turkey and cut a slice here and there, depending upon the local interest and
Whoever has the squeakiest wheel?
correct. And so one of the big concerns with Measure B is it's not a comprehensive transportation strategy. It was cooked up, well, we'll do a little here, we'll do a little there.
So it was figured out on the back of an envelope as an excuse to raise the tax to double the tax?
Correct, correct.
Okay. One of the other things that's going on is they're talking about fare increases. Is that correct?
They have been.
What is the fare right now for bus and for light rail?
I think it's $275, $280.
I'm sorry, I don't know.
You know, that was our first issue last January, and I'd have to look back at our report.
I would too.
But we certainly issued a report through Ion Sacramento on that subject. No on Measure B is a different committee, and analyzed that. At that time, RT wanted to raise the fares to $3, and that would have been the highest in the nation, on par with New York City. And Ion Sacramento did an analysis. Greg Thompson, who's an expert in this field, did an analysis, made several reports to the RT board, and they changed and took a little different direction and delayed the increases. So again, I'd like to compliment Henry Lee, the new general manager, who is taking initiative to improve RT's service. You know, the goal has to be transportation for people in the county. And I think his heart's in the right place, and he seems to have the intestinal fortitude to move forward with unpleasant, difficult tasks, like restructuring the staff and addressing costs in wages and in pensions.
Okay. I'm always curious about the economics of public transportation, whether it's bus or rail. To me, when you're talking bus, you already have the streets, so you're really just talking. You know, your capital expense is just the coaches, primarily, and the maintenance. Capital expense for the coach, and then ongoing operating expense for the drivers and the maintenance. But for light rail, you're talking about not only the rail cars and the rail locomotives, but also putting down rails,
Yes.
steel, and electrical service to those tracks. Is there any way in the world that fares can ever pay for the capital and the operating expenses of light rail? Is that even in the
No.
realm of possibility?
No.
Okay, so from the get-go, we're talking about a highly subsidized operation.
A highly subsidized operation. I believe the model, and again, I would defer to Greg Thompson, who is our expert. but I've listened to him talk enough. I've picked up a few snippets, and I believe the goal is for the fare box to cover a quarter.
A quarter.
A quarter.
So the rest is being subsidized by people who are stuck in their cars driving to work and fighting the traffic.
By these kinds of taxes. And of course, various stages of government at the state and federal level.
But by
give
tax money,
gifts,
by
but
tax,
it's all tax
money.
money.
Yeah.
All tax money,
It's
whether
all tax money.
whether it's sales tax money
Yeah.
or federal and state tax money coming
The
back.
fare box is targeted at 25%. And people talk about theories about having free ridership to encourage. The biggest issue with the RT rate hike last January was RT's ridership has been declining, as it's declining in Los Angeles and other areas. And
Wait a minute. Ridership is going down and they want to make more capital investments?
yes.
Okay, I don't understand. What kind of operation says, we're losing money, let's build more infrastructure so we can lose more?
I don't understand the benefit between light rail that you need to put in all the capital improvements and just buying another bus to run on the road.
Okay.
What's
It
the
takes
problem?
road space.
So again, I'm not an expert, okay? But in high volume,
Well, we don't have
light
that
rail.
here.
No, we don't. That's why
Or
most
will we
light
ever?
rail
Or will we ever?
does not make sense, particularly going to the airport. There will be no ridership from Natomas into the city, and there will be minimal ridership from the airport into the city and vice versa. So your point is well taken that light rail does not make sense. Light rail does make sense in high volume urban areas. We are not a high volume urban area.
Can't you just dedicate a road to buses and
Why
taxis
dedicate?
and Ubers as opposed to having
HOV.
a road with rails in it?
Well, that's an HOV.
Yeah.
I think the prime example of what you're talking about is the useless streetcar that's proposed for Sacramento, that's been voted down by the voters and is still alive because there's federal money and there's cap and trade money.
Oh,
being
cap and
out-
trade works into this too?
Oh, yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
Well, and even a particular city council person has said, we can't leave money on the table.
Let's name names.
Really?
Yeah, well, what city council person?
Steve Hansen.
Steve Hansen says we will go into debt even further simply to.
Because it's there.
Because we can pick up a few.
Never
scraps
let
from
a
the table.
crisis go to waste.
yes. So when we talk about the circulator streetcar downtown, we've talked about how most people can walk faster than the streetcar will take them from one end to the other. And we've talked about the high cost, $200 million to install it. Well, we could put buses on there, like you've talked about, tomorrow with a low capital investment. And we could test this for ridership. It's a well-known secret that most of these streetcar systems in other cities have failed, and they have to make them free to get any ridership at all. So you rent a few buses, you buy a few buses, you put them on the circuit, you see if there's ridership to support it. If there isn't, oh, maybe you move that bus to another route, but you don't move a streetcar's track.
You know, and Greg's report that he covered the streetcar, he mentioned that they're even only going to charge $1 for a ride on the streetcar, but it would operate at a deficit of about $6 million a year.
$6 million
So
a year.
the dollar fare, it's going to cost what, $10 to provide that ride? Capital costs included, something like that?
Well, it depends upon how many people get on board.
Yeah.
But the estimate to operate a 3-mile streetcar with the proposal is an operating budget of $4 to $8 million a year So how many of that?
And that's not including capital
No.
expenses.
No. The capital comes from cap and trade, the feds, Measure B. Okay. You got to know the financing.
Except that Measure B is supposed to be for capital, but they're actually spending it on whatever, I think it's pensions and salaries.
Salaries and wages.
And borrowing the money for the capital expenses.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What business school do these folks go to?
I don't know.
I don't think they did.
Okay, got it. Okay. I'm beginning to understand this. What about labor costs? I'm assuming all of these trolley drivers and train drivers and bus drivers are unionized? Would that be a good guess?
They are all unionized, and there are some issues there. There are a lot of work rules. So the first work rule that the unions have negotiated is that there will be no part-time drivers.
No part-time drivers,
Right.
even though there are peak commuting times, which last only a couple 3 hours.
Yeah.
You still have to drive for 8 hours,
Yeah.
even if
You
there's no
remember the old
ridership.
days when the school bus driver drove the kids to school?
Right.
And then did maintenance at the school and then drove somebody home afterwards?
When I was a kid, the school bus driver did the route in the morning for a couple of hours and then did the route in the afternoon for a couple of hours and slept in the middle of the day.
Okay.
And was paid part-time.
Yeah. So those are all work rule issues. And some people find it satisfactory to work part-time. What we have at RT is almost all of the drivers are on an overtime schedule because of the peak and non-peak issues and the extent of the day. To the point that even when they're on vacation, they are paid overtime
Wait a
for
minute,
being
wait a
on
minute, wait a
vacation.
minute.
How can they be on vacation and paid overtime? How can they be paid anytime when they're on vacation?
Well,
Well, there is
Vacation
compensation with most employers where you keep getting your normal base rate of pay while you're on vacation.
and if that includes
Okay.
overtime, it includes overtime. Is that what they're arguing?
That's what they're arguing. So they all get paid overtime while they're on vacation. Plus the substitute driver that covers them when they're on vacation, because we can't bring any part-timers in to cover events like that, gets paid overtime. So we have a
Why are they not
distorted
hiring a
cost.
couple of more drivers so nobody has to drive overtime?
Well, that's a good question for Henry Lee. And I don't have the answer to that. We've met with the RT people on several occasions, but certainly their business is complex. And as an outsider, you can't understand it all in a 2-hour meeting. But they're paying too much. They have 5 retirement programs.
Huh?
5 different retirement
Why?
programs. I can't
I mean,
answer that.
for one class of employees, drivers?
Well, there are assorted classes of employees.
Well, wait a minute. Drivers and what else?
Drivers, mechanics,
Oh, okay.
office personnel, the general manager. You know, the general manager just retired. I consider him one of the people responsible for RT's state as it currently exists. He and the board of directors, that's where the buck stops. And he retired with a retirement of about $280,000 a year.
Wait a minute. 280, well, okay. Is that
Plus
more than he was
benefits.
making as the manager? Or is that unclear?
I'm not certain about that. I have an inkling, but I'm not certain. I think the important part to consider for me as a taxpayer is that the maximum he was to get was $210,000, according to federal guidelines.
So he's getting overtime in retirement? Is that what's going on?
You could look at it that way, but that extra $75,000 a year will come out of the operating budget of RT for the general manager's lifetime.
And he's probably
So-
retiring at 50 or 60 or something like that.
He's younger than I am.
Yeah, he's not an old guy.
If I had
Why
a
not?
$280,000 retirement, I'd retire also.
So I think the point to make here is the compensation structure at RT is just totally out of whack. You know, we need to pay people for the service they bring to the party. And I'm not disparaging any member of the party other than the accountable people at the top. But we cannot waste the taxpayers' money.
Well, let's talk about the accountable people at the top. We've made fun of the now retired, well-retired manager. What about the board? Ultimately, most business decisions end up with the board of directors. They're the ultimate, have the ultimate responsibility. Are they just part-time people that aren't paying attention?
They are all politicians from
Oh, and so they're
cities
paying lots of
and
attention.
counties.
So they're paying lots of attention.
They're paying lots of attention, but I'm not sure that they're paying attention to the right things. You have to recognize that they're all elected officials, 3 or 4 from the city of Sacramento, a couple from the county. I don't have the whole list here. It's on the internet. You can look it up.
Okay, can I assume that the motivation for the board then would be to make sure that their city is getting service one way or another? That's primary, as opposed to whether or not the system as a whole produces a smaller loss than it would otherwise? Am I putting you on the spot?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot to attribute motivation to people that I am not that intimately familiar with.
Okay, sorry about that.
But when you look at their priorities, they are elected by their constituency.
And so their responsibility, as far as who they answer to, the voters that are electing them, are people who say, how come there's no bus service or rail service to Ileton?
To Ileton.
Okay, I understand, I get the picture.
And given the number of developers who have contributed to the Yes on B, and given the debacle of the Measure A funds going to Township 9, $42 million to the train, the light rail to nowhere.
Would it be also fair to assume that those same campaign contributors to A and B are also campaign contributors to the re-election campaigns of the board members?
I would bet that's correct.
Okay, we're getting to
I would be willing to go to
we're getting-
Las Vegas and put a lot of money on that square.
We're getting to the crux of the matter, and it's a good thing, because we're out of time. That's the show for this week.
Hold up
We'll
your
see you
sign.
again next week, same time, same, yeah, let's see the sign. So, vote no on, don't double the tax, vote no on B. That's who we're dealing with here. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next week.